Some entrepreneurs build one business and stay in that lane. My guest today is not one of those entrepreneurs. His journey started on the tennis court, eventually led to building a tennis business in Beverly Hills, and later moved through real estate, franchise ownership, recruiting technology, and now coaching coaches. Along the way, he built businesses, led teams, helped support hundreds of real estate agents, created tools that impacted recruiting across North America, and learned that entrepreneurship is rarely a straight line. It's a series of transitions, some planned, some expected, some exciting, some painful, and each one teaches you something if you're willing to pay attention. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. My guest today is Adam Roach, founder and CEO of I Love Coaching Co., a company built to help coaches of all types turn their experience, knowledge, and expertise into a real business. Not just athletic coaches, but business coaches, life coaches, leadership coaches, consultants, advisors, and other experts who know that they can help people, but may not yet have the structure, clarity, or confidence to turn that knowledge into a sustainable business. Adam's own entrepreneurial path gives him a unique perspective on that work. He was a collegiate tennis player, launched his first business in his 20s, built a successful tennis club, as I mentioned, in Beverly Hills, moved into real estate, operated Keller Williams franchises, built recruiting technology, and eventually created I Love Coaching. As usual, we're going to break this conversation into two segments. In the first segment, we'll talk about Adam's entrepreneurial journey, the highs, the lows, the reinventions, and everything in between. In the second segment, we'll dig into his area of expertise, helping coaches and experts build businesses with clarity, conviction, and a model that actually works. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the show. I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
As I'm sure it will. You used to be a collegiate tennis player before becoming an entrepreneur. How did that competitive background shape the way you approach business?
It shaped everything, honestly. I mean, it was my drive. It was my competition. It was my motivation to succeed and win. Though ultimately, I'll be honest, that approach to business, to life, to everything almost was to my detriment about 6 years ago. And I'm happy to share that story, but I grew up the son of an Olympic swim coach. And so coaching has always been around my life. Competing has always been around my life. I'm the grandson and a great-grandson of farmers from Indiana. And so it's being a collegiate athlete and then transitioning into the business world. I brought so much of that drive, so much of that intentionality around hard work, around time block, around following models, right? Because our coaches would teach us in the tennis world patterns. And looking at that through the lens in the business space was something that I brought with me.
You know, you mentioned that you were, highly competitive and that may have been to your detriment. Some years later. I do think that the skill or the attributes that are perfect for starting a company include competitiveness,
Sure.
ego, bravado, naivety, arrogance, and maybe a poor assessment of risk helps. And those are
Sure.
like high-octane starter fluid that you would spray down a carburetor on a car that won't start. They will get you started. They will propel you. They're first gear, right? Highly leveraged, but you can't go far on first gear. You can't drive a car on starter fluid. And I think, I was the same way. I was, although not through sports, but I was very competitive just by nature. I still am. I had a tremendous ego. I was completely ignorant into what business was about. We talked off air about, I had a good tech acumen, and I figured, how hard could business be, Adam? Come on, I can figure that out. I'm a smart guy. Yeah, it was a lot harder than I expected. So I'm grateful today for my early competitiveness, my early ego, my early naivety, arrogance, ignorance, because I think if I was aware that statistically 80% of all startup businesses fail, inconvenient truth, I don't know if I would have done it. I
Sure.
needed those sets of skills, but I also needed to shift those skills, like shifting the car. I needed to get out of first gear. I needed to go up to second and third and run through the whole gears for the appropriate scale of the company. And I think that's maybe why 80% of all businesses fail. I don't think it's because business itself is inherently risky. I think founders who don't scale themselves at the level the business has scaled to fail
Right.
the business, right? I don't think the business fails them. I think they fail the business. Does that ring true in your world?
Well, I mean, all of your language 100% rings true. Let's go back to ego first, right? Because you're not wrong. It is. I mean, we don't know what we don't know when we are launching anything. I mean, let's look at. I'm a '90s kid growing up in the '90s, which was the start of the .com days, right? And we didn't know what we didn't know. All we thought back in the day when we were attempting to become programmers was that this company is going to go public. We didn't
Yeah.
even know what that meant. We
Right.
just kept seeing all
But it
these
meant you got to drive a
pub-
Ferrari. That's what it meant
yeah,
to a lot of
that's really what it
people.
meant. It meant actually to us that you built a business that didn't make any money, but a lot of people were going to throw money at it. So, I mean, there was just stupidity around all over the place back then. But then we watched that world, and it almost, let's fast forward to where we are right now in the AI space. We don't know what we don't know, right? And there's so much naivete in that space that maybe if you do have big ego and big drive and big, I don't even say ambition, but just almost a level of not being able to gauge the cause and effect of your actions, yeah, you might actually accidentally have success, which is kind of what I did for almost 20 years of my life, maybe almost 25 to 30 years of my life.
Yeah, I'm grateful for those traits.
Yes.
Won't even call them skills. I'm grateful for those traits, and I'm also grateful that I learned that those traits, which kind of formed a metaphorical magic wand, that magic wand one day just stopped working. I would come in and I'd be like, hey, I can solve this. I can put this fire out. Boom, boom, boom. Abracadabra.
Right.
And I'm like, what's wrong with my stick? My wand's not working. My Harry Potter wand that has never failed me is no longer working. And that is a 2x4 to the face, from the business guys. That's a real learning experience.
When I was in the real estate franchise ownership space, I was in the Keller Williams world and was having great success. And Gary Keller said something to me one time that has now always stuck with me, which is almost a little bit to the adverse of what we're talking about. And he says, Adam, don't allow your persuasion and energy to knock over the second domino before the first domino has fallen. And at that time, when I'm having this conversation with him in my relatively younger 30s, I thought, no one can stop my energy. No one can stop my persuasion. I'm going to go persuade and bring as much energy to every situation as I can, and whatever domino falls will fall. And boy, was I wrong. I mean, I wasn't even close to being accurate on what I just said there, because what he said was so true.
Turned
And
out
if I
Gary
could
knew
speak to
something.
yeah, he did. If I could speak to myself back then, now it would be, don't lose that. Don't lose that drive. Don't lose that energy. You can maybe check the ego a little bit, but go an inch wide and a mile deep, right? That's more what I would probably align with, because I've had three seasons, if you will, of life in the business world, from the tennis world to the tech world to the real estate world, and to now this space of serving world, which is what I call the I Love Coaching community.
Yeah. You launched your first business in your 20s, which is very impressive. What did you think entrepreneurship was going to be like before you actually lived it?
Well, let's back up first. So let's go back to the beginnings, right? The beginnings were going to grandpa's house in northern Indiana as a farmer was fun for me, right? It was fun. There was 2,000 plus acres of corn and soybean. There were um, chickens. There were cows. There was grandma hosing you off with the hose, saying you stepped in cow poop and you can't come in this house. All those fun little things. And then watching how hard grandpa worked. And then watching my dad. So my dad, as I said, was an Olympic swim coach. Watching him coach athletes to a level that was world class was, again, I didn't know what I was watching. I didn't know what I was experiencing. But what I picked up, or what we always say is what's caught, not taught, what was caught there was go win, go work hard. The sun will go up, the sun will go down, and it doesn't matter about you, but what matters about you is your work ethic. What matters about you is what is the goal, what is the vision. And so when I started and had Beverly Hills Tennis up and running, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought to myself, well, why wouldn't more tennis pros want to be here at our club? So I went out and I started recruiting other tennis pros from other competitors that I didn't really think anything about it from a negative business standpoint. I just wanted to have the best tennis club in Beverly Hills, and I wanted all the cool pros to be there. And so that was me just having a big party every single time, until I realized that some of these other general managers were not happy with me because I was stealing their revenue.
You're poaching their people.
I was. Yeah, I really was. And again, I don't think that that's bad, because that's okay business. But boy, it was a lot of fun. I didn't know what I didn't know. And there was a neat transition, and we don't have to go into it just yet, but I transitioned only because I was teaching a guy who was a lender. And he said, hey, you should go buy a house. And I thought, well, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Beverly Hills. This is a very expensive area. Now, mind you, this was the early 2000s. And he says, don't worry about it. It's called 100% financing, and it's called stated loans. So you just state an income. You just tell us what you think it is. Yep. And
which, by the way, eventually led to the 2008 debacle, right?
Oh, yeah.
Robo-signing, stated income, all that stuff.
My point was this. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I got into that world. And then he told me to sell the house, 6 to 9 months later. And I said, I don't know what I don't know, but why would I sell this house? My parents have lived in the same house for 35 years. This doesn't make any sense to me, but I'll go with it. And I made $90,000. So let's pause for a second. So we have the tennis club running, and I'm recruiting tennis pros to increase our revenue. But again, I don't really realize why I'm doing this. I'm just having a good time. I get into real estate on accident. I make money there. And I thought to myself, okay, if this is how people make money in real estate, I need to have more real estate. But I don't want to have like $300,000 houses. Can I go get $1 million houses? Because the margins have to be maybe a little bit higher. But how do I get to them? Because in Beverly Hills, it's illegal to go door knock. So I created another company. And this was not on the entry one, or the intro. This was called Beverly Hills Court Maintenance. And the idea behind it was I would be able to, and I built a little team around this, clean the courts of the homes that had tennis courts privately, and I would get to know the homeowner. Mm-hmm. And if they ever wanted to sell, I could buy the house and then flip it. And so I did that successfully a few times until the cops came.
You don't have to knock on the door when you're already in on their tennis court, right?
Well, but here's how I got onto their tennis court, because I didn't know that it was illegal until the third time. In Beverly Hills, they have alleyways, right? So there's no garages facing the street. They're all old school alleyways. And so I would walk around like an old school paper boy, and I had this. They would put the papers in the front bag here and they'd throw them out. And so I had one of those, but I had inside of there tennis balls, my Beverly Hills maintenance brochure. And at that point in time, I'd got my real estate license and I had hung it with a broker. And so I put that on there. I took a rubber band and I wrapped both brochure basically brochure and my real estate card, and I'd throw it over the fences into the tennis courts, And I would generate business that way. And so, just again, bravado, stupidity, dumbness, until the cops stopped me and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I just found this tennis ball and I've given it back to them." He's like, "No, I can see you're soliciting. You can't do that. Don't let me catch you again." And I thought to myself, okay, I won't get caught again.
There
So
you go. Yes.
I would do it in about 2 or 3 weeks and they'd catch me again. And then by the third time, they were like, "Hey, listen, we know who you are. We're going to have to take you to jail if we're not getting your attention. Don't do it again." And so I did stop. And so, just silly stupidity, but having fun at the same time.
That's great. You went on to build that tennis business in Beverly Hills. What did that experience teach you about leadership and recruiting and building a team? I know part of it was don't solicit and don't throw stuff over the fence, right? that you learned
Right.
eventually. Eventually you learned that.
Right.
But what else did that teach you about recruiting and building a team and leadership?
Well, I'll back up a little bit. So when I became so myself and the other two partners, I was the general manager, and I was a young general manager, and we had tennis pros at that time that were in their 40s, 50s, 60s even, and I had to call a team meeting or just a meeting in general when I took over the role as general manager in my late 20s, maybe early 30s, but late 20s, early 30s. And I had to share with them that I'm not better than they are. And I may not even be smarter than them. But here's what I am. I have more responsibility than they do. And that is to run this business. And I said that simply to lay out expectations that I was going to grow this company. And that was my responsibility. And to grow the company, we had to have standards. And to have standards, we had to have expectations. And since I was also a tennis pro that knew all the loopholes, let's say, I was closing all the loopholes. And some liked it, some didn't. Some, in the beginning of leadership, they looked at me as arrogant, or I've heard every name under the sun, but I didn't care. Right? Because I had a mission. I had hard work. My goal was to build this to become the best tennis facility in Southern California. And we were on track for that. And it was fantastic. We lost pros, we gained pros. And within, 2 or 3 years, I was named Headpin Pro of the Year. And we were recognized in one of the Los Angeles magazines as the best place to play tennis in Beverly Hills. So it was kind of cool.
You later moved into real estate, as you had mentioned, Keller Williams, including 6- and 7-figure flips, which is pretty impressive. What was the biggest lesson you learned about risk during that stage of your career?
So, as you mentioned, 2008 came.
Yep.
And what did I learn about risk? I'm not sure if I learned anything about risk at that point in time. And here's what I mean by that, because we were playing with house money. We had never really lost in any of our wholesaling or in our flipping game. And until 2008 came. And what I learned in 2008 was we were holding about $2 million worth of properties, and they were still selling, but we had one property left. And I think we paid $715,000 for it, had it back on the market for $815,000. We had this whole 3-week turnaround period, and we had 6 offers. And only one of the offers was non-contingent and cash. And that guy was like, "Listen, there's way too many offers here. I don't want to play in this game." And none of the offers could sell their house. And so the market was falling out. So I finally was able to get it under contract and took about a $90,000 loss and had to write the bank a check for $90,000. Now, praise that I was good with my money at the time, and I had money set aside because it was just house money for me. It was mine, but it wasn't mine. And so I wrote the check to the bank for $90,000 that I had lost and moved on. What I learned about risk, though, was if you over leverage and get caught with your pants down, which I saw a lot of my friends do at that time, that's a tough, bumpy road, right? That is a road where I watched many of my friends get stuck with holdings that they couldn't move, and they were still on the hook for those monies. So what did I learn? Don't over leverage yourself, right? Don't over leverage yourself in the financial space. And here's the crazy part about that same house. That same house that I took a hit on for $90,000 about 2.5 years later was worth less than half of what I sold it for. Nuts.
So you actually
Absolutely nuts.
got out pretty good shape, all things considered.
Yeah, I was okay with the $90,000 loss. $350,000+ loss, I couldn't have wrote that check, I'll tell you that.
Well, I think depending when you got into real estate, particularly flipping real estate, there was a time, a long time actually, where there was no perception of risk, particularly in California, particularly in Southern California. Are you still here in Southern California?
No, I'm in Charleston now, South Carolina.
Okay, well, I'm in Southern California. And there was a time when it was magic. You know, you bought a house, you sold it 15 months later for, 20, 30% more. And you'd have to be pretty stupid to lose money on a house, right? It would be hard to do. You'd have to work at that. So I can understand, particularly in that era, pre-2008, 2009, that a lot of people, a lot of amateurs started getting into the business. And then TV shows, Flip or Flop, and all the others that followed made it seem like anyone can do this, right? And it's fun. And you get a beautiful spouse, and you get, all this stuff. You get to drive fancy cars. You get a TV show. It seemed like a recipe for guaranteed success. And of course, there is no such thing. But then, of course, the business gods have a different plan. They'll change the games of the rules. They'll change the rules of the game without telling you. And next thing you know, it goes from you can't fail to you probably will fail. The risk balances itself. Your career,
I think to go back real quick is knowing what I know now, not necessarily just about flipping or wholesaling or any of those things. It would be to have an exit strategy, right? Have an exit strategy, understand the contingencies, understand plan A, plan B, plan C. So what I learned from risk was just that. A few years later, there's a group that I belong to, and we got to have dinner with one of the Shark Tank members. And this was when Shark Tank was like really hot, and it was relatively new, Robert. And that was the very first thing one of the guys had asked him, that he said, looking at any business he's going to invest in, the first thing he says is, how do I exit this? Not exit as in sale, but exit as an exit strategy, right? And so that's something, looking back on it now, what would I tell myself as a flipper, as a wholesaler, is understand every property needs to have an exit strategy.
It's funny because there's parts of our lives that we automatically include an exit strategy. Whenever you go on a flight, I'm flying to Texas tomorrow. The first 10 minutes on the ground before we take off, we'll be discussing our exit strategy, right?
That's right.
They don't plan on opening those doors and having the slides out. They don't plan on, quote unquote, landing on water, but you prepare for it, right?
That's right.
It's 1 in a million that will actually happen, but you prepare for it. Yet the chances of losing a business is 80%, not 1 in a million. And we don't plan for it, right? It's when you look at it with a greater perspective, it's quite counterintuitive how we don't plan to exit. We just think everything will work because it always has. And that is a real danger. So your career includes several reinventions, from tennis, real estate, franchising, ownership, recruiting, technology, now coaching. Were those transitions planned, or did opportunity, necessity, or frustration push you forward? What led to those pivots?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I coach, and that's the language that we use now, is uncertainty, right? I can I can solve for what I call uncertainty. And here's what I mean by that. When I was in the tennis space, I felt an itch. I felt a calling. I felt something outside of that industry was calling me into it. But I thought, why would I ever leave this world, SoCal, Beverly Hills, collared shirt, shorts, teaching tennis to people like Tom Hanks, Courtney Cox, Val Kilmer, right? Why would I ever leave that? And what I coach people to now in that space is it's okay to start to identify what's causing that itch, right? And in my world, as I transitioned from tennis to real estate, I realized what I was feeling was I had been teaching tennis for 10 plus years, and I was actually physically getting a little tired. But I also didn't want to be a 70-year-old tennis pro. And yes, to your point, what was in vogue at that time, even though the bottom had fallen out, was the real estate world, right? I knew I had made money in that space, so let's go make some more. And fast forward, I don't know, I mean, many, many, many years, but just here in the last 2 or 3 years, I had the opportunity to be coached by a guy named Dan Martell. And Dan Martell wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. He's from Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. And he said something that now looking back on it makes all the sense in the world. You will transition, you will go to a vertical where you're making money, right? And so, Adam, why didn't you leave the tennis world and maybe go into the mortgage world? Because I'd never made money in mortgage, right? Well, Adam, why didn't you transition from tennis to home building world? Because I'd never built a home before, right? So I love that Dan said that, because hindsight, looking back on it, that's why I made transitions. I transitioned from one space that I knew to another space that I had made money in and lost money. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make more money at that time.
There was
and
you were familiar with those spaces, if not an expert in those spaces. You were familiar with those spaces. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So that's why I transitioned. But I didn't want to do the flips anymore. And I definitely didn't want to do general brokerage, even though I thought, well, I'll give this a shot. I didn't like to take buyers out. I didn't like to go on listing appointments. It was too linear for me. And so I looked at the people that owned these franchises. And ironically, I used to teach tennis to 2 of them. And so I just started asking them, hey, what does this world of brokerage ownership look like? Because the way that I looked at it was a one-to-many approach, right? And I love a one-to-many. I love a one-to-many scale opportunity. And so as I got to learn more, one of the guys who was running the brokerage said, well, you need to run a brokerage first. I said, great. I said, find me a role anywhere in the world or anywhere in the country, and I'll do it. He says, okay. And so he does. He found me one, and that's what brought me to Charleston. And I came here, didn't know anything about Charleston. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Other than this is where the Civil War started, from what I understand. And I did. I ran the brokerage. But I didn't know anything about brokerage world, so I had to cut my teeth on that. And so as I did that, I thought, well, I know how to build. I know how to scale. I know how to do real estate as a flipper. So let me go do what I did in the tennis world, and let me just go start recruiting. So I did. I just went out and started building relationships with people that I didn't know. And then I understood the value of the model that I was running, because it was just a model. It wasn't I was recruiting to Keller Williams. I was recruiting to a model to help them become better. That's what I did in Beverly Hills tennis. Was I found these pros, helped them become better business people, and then did the same thing in the real estate space. And so at that time, I made a deal with the owner. And I said, if I can get to a certain level within a certain time frame, I want to be able to buy 10 shares of the company. He says, okay. So I did. So I got to that part, bought 10 shares, and he says, that was fantastic. I said, now I got another opportunity for you. He said, what's that? I said, if I can do what I did in 12 months, in 6 months, will you give me 10 shares? And he said, yeah. I said, great. So I did it. And so now I owned 20% of this office.
Wow.
And that was my second entrance into ownership distributions, right? I had ownership distributions from the tennis world at the same time. So I hadn't sold that company yet. And now I was getting ownership distributions from this franchise. And I hired another coach at that time. And he says, you know what? Let's do something fun. I want you to make a goal on how many K1s you can get at the end of a year. I was like, oh, yeah. This is going to be fun, right? And so that's when I grew that real estate brokerage from about 120 some agents to nearly 450 agents. And we were doing about $200,000 in profit. And we got it up to almost $1 million in profit. And so that was fun. And so that's when I took my persuasion, as Gary said, and my energy, and I started knocking on other franchise owners' doors. I like to door knock. And I was like, are you tired of me kicking your butt? Because if you are, let me buy you. You stay an owner, and I'll do exactly what I did in my other office, and I'll do this here, and I'll do this here, and I'll do this here. And I did that. And so that's what led me to owning 3 real estate franchises.
You didn't let go of all your bravado. You hung on to enough of that, because that's pretty ballsy. That's really awesome. Looking back, what was one of the toughest entrepreneurial moments that forced you to become a better business person?
Selling them. Selling them.
Emotional ties, stubbornness, ego, all that.
All the above. And I'll take you down this story. So 2016, I have a recruiting software that I had a friend of mine in SoCal who was a dear friend, but he was one of those friends that owed you a favor, right? And he owed me a big favor. And the reason he owed me a favor is because he and another buddy of mine crashed a car that I had, and I took the fall for it. And no one was hurt. Everything was fine. But again, they owed me a big favor.
Yeah.
And so I called in that favor, and he built this software for me called Recruiting Bridge. Now, brainchild wise, it was mine, but he was the developer of it. So we split the company.
Mm-hmm.
And as I started to use this, as I started to build my notoriety inside of Keller Williams, this thing took off like a rocket ship. Like literal rocket ship. And that's when I understood and learned the world of subscription, of monthly recurring income.
Software as a service.
That's right, a SaaS model. And so we hit $100,000 of revenue at an 84% profit margin in 9 months. Just shot up, right? So 2016 happens. That's happening. I'm owning these real estate franchises. And I get divorced, right? So that was the first thing, because I had lost focus of the relationship. And my dad gets diagnosed with Parkinson's. And Parkinson's isn't a killer, but at the end of the day, the complications from it can become. So went through a divorce. That was really expensive. And Dad's health just really started to fail fast. And at this point in time, John Maxwell, who is a leadership guru, who is a
Maxwell
author,
leadership courses. Yeah.
That's right. Yep. We had become fast friends. He had become a mentor of mine and a coach of me personally. And by 2019, my father had passed. And so it happened real fast. And John asked me a question. And he says, Adam, let me ask you something. When are you going to stop chasing success and start chasing significance?
Wow.
And I said, I don't think I understand that question. And he says, okay. He says, just sit with it. So I went to my father's funeral, and I looked out over the audience. And there's 400 or 500 people there. His former swimmers, family members, other coaches. And John said, with significance comes legacy. And I said, okay, I'm listening. And he says, Adam, I want you to remember that you can't have a legacy without legs. I said, okay, you're speaking to me, but I don't think I'm catching it. So I'm at my dad's funeral, just give the eulogy. And a man comes up to me and he says, I want to share something with you. And he pulls out one of those old school cassette players, right? So he puts the cassette in, he pushes it down, and he pushes play. If you're familiar in swimming with breaststroke, your head goes up, comes down, goes up, goes down, right? And so all I heard on this tape was go, 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 go. And it was my father's voice. And then he goes to the next He fast forwards, right? It's go, 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 go. And what he had done is my dad had a cadence for this swimmer that if my dad's voice was faster, the swimmer was supposed to go faster.
Mm-hmm.
If it was at a certain pace, the swimmer was to maintain that speed. And so this guy had put that on the pool deck while my dad was coaching him. And he says, I need to share something with you. I recorded this 27 years ago, and I still use it to this day with the people that I coach. It's like, whoa, okay.
Wow. Legacy.
So I left. That's right. So I left the funeral, came back to Charleston, sat, we call it the beach chair moment, sat on the beach here in Charleston. I'm a spiritual guy, so I brought my Bible, brought a journal, I brought some water, brought some sunscreen for my bald head, and I just sat there. And I journaled, and I read, and I prayed, and I just said, what do I do? Tell me, where do I go? Give me something here, right? And I kept hearing, surround yourself with better people. Surround yourself with better people. And so I took that to my pastor, and I said, well, you told me if I think I'm hearing God to lay it up on Scripture, can you help me out here? And he said, sure. And so I keep it in front of me all the time now. And that's Proverbs 13:20. And it's walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And he asked me, he said, have you ever considered selling your businesses? And I said, no. And he says, do you feel that those people that you're walking with right now are wise or a companion of fools that are suffering harm? I was like, wow, I really had to sit with that. And so I finally just said, okay, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to surrender to this because clearly if I'm supposed to be walking with different people, I need to sell. And so I walked in back to back meetings and said, guys, easy conversation today. Either I'm buying you all out or you're buying me out. And I know I own the majority of the shares of the companies here. I'll figure out a way to raise the money. But I'm not mad. I'm just surrendering to something else. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to tell you that I'm not going to be in business with you anymore. You decide, though, not me. You decide.
If you don't like the company you keep, change the company.
That's right, Mike. And
right.
So I said, I need to know, though, within 48 hours because I'm ready to move.
TikTok.
So I left it to them, right? And I'd made these guys a lot of money. And they all came back and said, we'll buy you out. Fantastic. I had no attachment to the outcome. I knew in the operating agreement how the buyouts were going to go. It was seamless. They were great buyouts. And I did. I took a step back. So the question there was, what did I have to do and where did I learn? Is that's what John was telling me, that I had chased success for so long. Money, notoriety, cars, what you name it, right? But there was no significance. And Mike, looking back on it, I knew that he was right because I could walk through the halls of my real estate companies that I had built and everybody knew me and I didn't know them. And that was wrong. Nobody I knew when I walked through those halls, no one was going to carry a tape and a tape recorder with my voice. No one was, because I was not being significant to them. I was just the owner. And that didn't sit well with me after that moment in time.
Wow, that's a powerful story. Your company helps coaches of all types turn their experience and expertise into real businesses. Why do so many talented people struggle to turn what they already know into a clear business model?
Yeah, great question. That's easy. It's their identity, right? And their identity is shaped in what I like to say is their yesterday container, right? And what I mean by that is if I look at my pathway, left college, tried to play professional tennis, found out real quick that I was American, not a European. So I was getting my butt kicked on this pseudo tour and not making any money. And so what did I do? I felt that my identity was tennis, so I got into the tennis world. Real estate. As I developed in the real estate world, I got into the container of real estate and realized that I could help other people in the real estate space. So as they transition into this coaching world, what I had to realize was that my past containers were not my identity. right? They were not my identity. And I see so many coaches that come into our community want to coach from their past container. That's not wrong, but they need to realize that that container is not their identity. And when they can identify correctly who they are, right? And I'll just take some of John's language. Am I chasing success or am I chasing significance? Significance is on a pathway to creating a legacy. I had to realize that my identity, I even say my pose, because it's a pose, was that I was a performance-driven man. Performance-driven. I had to be first. I wanted to have all the success. I wanted to have the notoriety. But that's not your identity. That's your ego, right? And after watching my father, not even watching the audience members at my father's funeral, I realized that, and then I went on to read a bunch of books and all about the masculine heart and those types of things, that the masculine heart is made up of three things: a warrior, an adventurer, and a lover. Nowhere in there is there a performance-driven dude, right?
Right.
And so that was my pose. So I had to look back at all of my containers. I had to look back at all of my what I call problem solution cycles and say, who do I want to serve? What areas can I serve people the best and the most in authentically? So that's what I created as the Real Coach Method, REAL. Real is not an arrogant term. It's an acronym that John helped me build called Relevant, Experiential, Authentic Leaders. So if you're stepping into a coaching space, I say you have to become a real coach. And a real coach is someone that has relevance, experience, is authentic, and is a leader. Leader meaning what? A leader is an influencer, and an influencer is getting someone to take action. And so that's when I was like, oh, I'm going to serve coaches. I have a passion for them. I've built my own coaching business after I exited my real estate companies because I was just coaching our software people. And I thought, I want to serve coaches. Why? Because coaches serve other people when done right. And so that's the vision statement that I have for the I Love Coaching community, is to empower coaches, not just me, the entire community, to empower coaches to change and serve 100 million people through our Real Coach Method. And that's what we do now. We get to serve these coaches. We get to help them build their businesses through our Real Coach Blueprint. And it's working, Mike. We've now been blessed to be on 4 continents of serving coaches.
20, 25 years from now, if I'm still on this earth, still doing this, we'll know your relevance when I talk to someone 25 years from now that says, yeah, I had this coach, or I heard about this coach who talked about real, right? That will be go. That will be your version of go, right?
Totally. Yeah. I'm a real coach. Yeah. I'm relevant. I'm experiential. I'm authentic, and I'm a leader. Real coach.
Yeah. I Love Coaching talks a lot about clarity, structure, and owning your lane. What does that mean, owning your lane? What does it mean for a coach, consultant, or an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Let's go back to the acronym REAL, right? So if Mike comes to me and says, hey, Adam, I want you to coach me to be a billionaire. Now, the ego coach would say, I can do that.
Sure.
But the relevant, experiential, authentic leader cannot, unless they've made $1 billion, right? So as we look at people transitioning into this world, we have to identify, where are they relevant? Where do they have experience? And in our blueprint through phase 1, we say you got to go inside before you go outside, right? Because you got to go find the area. Here comes the big one that people miss. You got to find the areas where you have solutions to problems that you've overcome. This is the word people miss, with passion, right? Because Mike, I could teach you the lessons that I learned from getting divorced, but I have no passion in that space. I don't ever want to deal with that again, right?
Right.
But I could teach you, I could coach you in that space, but I don't ever want to do that. I have no passion there.
Right.
I watched a coach one time come in that she coached from her past container and had no passion in it. And I knew she had no passion in it. And about 4 months later, she came back and she was like, if I have to coach these people again, I'm going to pull all my hair out and look like you, Adam. It's like, great. What are you going to do? She says, I'm going to go back to the blueprint and I'm going to redo the avatar part. Great. So she came back like a week later and she says, oh, I missed it. I said, what'd you miss? She goes, the word passion. She goes, I have no passion for those people.
There you go.
She goes, I have passion for people, mothers, women who are CEOs of their company. That's who I have passion for because that's me. I was like, great. Her business skyrocketed. Yep.
Yeah. We talked off air about my journey that got me into the professional world that I'm in now.
Yeah.
And I did not have a passion to start a business. I had a passion for a product. I wanted the world to see this product. This product solved a very important, specific problem that our industry was facing. And that's all I could think about was solving that problem. And I speak at universities pretty regularly on the subject of entrepreneurship. And one of the fun parts of that gig is I participate virtually through Zoom on it's part of Dartmouth College's entrepreneurial program within their engineering school, teaching engineers about innovation and entrepreneurship. And one of the projects they have to do before they complete the class is kind of have a fast pitch contest. So they have to create either a real company or a fictitious company, and many of them create real companies. And then I am on the group of 4 or 5 mock investors. So they got to do the elevator pitch. They got to show some performance. They got to give the pitch. They got to do things like that.
Yeah.
And these young people fill me with hope. You become your father when you start a sentence with kids these days, but I'll be my father for a moment. Kids these days, it's easy to assume we're all doomed. And I know my father's generation thought my generation was going to doom their generation. We all think that. And that doesn't happen. But when I do speak at the universities, I come back with like, we're fine. We're going to be fine. There's enough smart kids out there. There's enough kids with ambition that we're going to be fine. However, the one part of it that disappoints me is almost every student, I will ask them, what's where do you want to go with this? Where is your passion leading you? What's the greater goal? And they all talk about their exit strategy. They all talk about A rounds, B rounds, IPO, Lamborghini. That's pretty much what they all talk about. And I think if you miss the passion, you're going to be part of the 80% of businesses statistically that fail. Because the passion is what makes all the difference. And in my world, so many people ask me in the business community, what's your exit strategy? I'm like, I have no idea. We'll see where life takes me. I enjoy the journey so much. I don't want it to be over. I'm on a ride of my lifetime. I've had this business for 34 years. If I live to 200, I'll have it for, even more. I enjoy the journey. Now, someday life circumstances will, lead me to, okay, time to go, Mike. But right now, I'm living the dream. And it was a hard-earned dream, right? It wasn't easy. There's decades that I struggled. But the passion kept me from throwing in the towel. And because the passion was greater than the struggle. And it overwhelmed it. So I think you're exactly right. I think without the passion, we're just punching a clock, right?
Yeah,
and
agreed.
The moment we run into some pushback from the industry or from the economy or from whatever, we're going to fold because it's just not worth it.
Well, and to your point there, tennis world, real estate world, coaching world. I have a 10-year cycle roughly. And in my 10-year cycles, there become itches, right? It's like there's a fence and what's on the other side of that fence, right? Not the grass being greener, but what's just on the other side.
Yeah.
We're going on to year 6 of this. And someone asked me, they said, what's your exit strategy? And just to your point, I haven't worked a day in the last 6 years because without sounding cliche, this is just so passion driven. And they're like, well, you know how to exit. Would you ever consider exiting? What if the EBITDA, blah, 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 and the multiple, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just don't see it. It's not about the money anymore. It's literally about the space of significance that it has to do with other people now, right? So the neat part, you said in 25 years. In 25 years, this community will span the globe. We will serve people. We will continue to be AI forward, and I will know people's names, right? I will know who they are, and I will visit them. I will see them. I will engage with them versus walking through my halls and not knowing who people are.
That's great. Several years ago, a big holding company within our space approached me, and I'm like, okay, I know what this is going to be about.
Sure.
They buy best-in-class companies within certain segments of our industry, and they identified us as a best-in-class within a particular segment. So they wanted to come to the factory, and I said, no. We'll meet at a restaurant, right? I'm not going to freak everyone out. So I sat with them at a restaurant, and I knew this day would come. I had earlier in my career, I was anticipating, I was looking forward to this day coming. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the prophecy. And they said, we've identified your company, and we're on an acquisition spree right now, which I was aware of. And, we really want to move forward with your company. We'll make you a cash offer. It'll be very generous. Need to sign the NDAs, and, we need to have access to your books. And I told them no. And they, well, how can you say no without hearing an offer? That's not the reception we normally get. Usually it's red carpet.
Right.
And I said, with all due respect, this is a me issue, not a you issue. Right? It's like when you break up with a girlfriend, it's not you, it's me. I said, but I don't want to hear an offer because I don't want to sell. And they go, well, how do you know you don't want to sell if you don't hear an offer? At least hear the offer. I'm like, no, I can't. Because the first time I have a really tough week or a tough experience or business gets hard, because it goes in cycles,
sure,
I will kick myself. I will regret. Maybe. I fear that I will regret. I said, I would just rather not know, because that's just, to me, that's a distraction. And I don't want to be distracted. And they thought I had 8 heads on my shoulder. They thought I was a freak of nature. And they kind of shook their heads and they said, we have never experienced that kind of answer. And I took that, without trying to sound arrogant, I took that as a compliment, although I didn't express it that way. I said, I get it. I did not rehearse this. I'm sitting on my own shoulder going, what the hell are you talking about, Mike? Shut up. Listen.
Right.
Listen, consider. But I don't now have a regret because I didn't want the decision put in front of me. And I thought, well, it's kind of like the old philosophy of burn the boats. I burned the boat at that point. There's no going back. I'm not going to call them up and go, hey, you know what? I changed my mind. Because I know that multiple would be half at that point, right?
Sure.
So, but that to me was the first exercise of commitment. I'm committed to this project that I started 34 years ago. I'm still just as committed, probably even more. Because I can guarantee you, 32 years ago, I would have said, how much? I would have brought my empty briefcase and said, fill it up.
That's right.
Just a couple more questions. We're pretty much out of time. For the entrepreneurs that are listening or watching this episode who have real expertise but no clear business model yet, what's the first practical step they should take?
Well, very simply, I'm gonna self-promote here because this is This is a space that we see coaches or people who have something they want to share and or potentially monetize miss. My dad used to always say to me, not bad for an amateur, right?
Yes.
And he would say that because back in the day, Olympic athletes couldn't get paid. And so I'll never forget walking off a court playing tennis, and he said that to me, and I lost. And he said, not bad for an amateur. And I was like, Dad, I'm a professional. And he says, you're a professional when you win and get paid. So to those
Wow.
listeners, I would say the same thing. If you have something of value that you can serve your former self with, and there's many of your former selves out there, I have a document called Get Paid to Coach, right? It doesn't mean you have to coach, but it is a step-by-step process on how to take that, what I call problem solution cycle, and learn that there are avatars out there that would pay you for it. So if they go to ilovecoachingco.com, there's a CO there, that's community, so ilovecoachingco.com, and go to Find Your Path. Click on New to Coaching. That'll just take you to the guide that is Get Paid to Coach. Now, let's say that there are people out there who have a sellable offer. I would challenge them to say, is your offer scalable? Because that's where I watch people who are making money, professionals, not amateurs, and yet can they scale their offer? 90% of the time, they can't.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the reason why. It's because they don't know how to stop trading their time for money, and they can't actually make more money in less time. And that's what we teach you how to do. So when you go there, go to I Already Coaching, and you'll see on there, it is called the scalable scorecard. Again, no strings attached. Just go through the questions, and it'll tell you if your model will scale or not. And we have watched countless coaches go through this process of creating clarity. Because what does someone need here, Mike, to move into a space that they can become a professional is they need a model, right? We know people need models because you can go be an entrepreneur all day long. What are entrepreneurs good at? Starting something. What are entrepreneurs bad at? Finishing something,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You can go start something, but if you start it and you don't have a model to follow, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, right? You're throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And this is a model that we've created called our blueprint. The blueprint is a 4-phase blueprint from phase 1, going inside out. Phase 2, building a one-on-one coaching business to $180,000 or whatever you want to. Phase 3 is how do we do that in less time and make $360,000. And phase 4 is how to build $1 million coaching business. And that's what we do all day long with these coaches that we serve, is help them build their businesses.
That's great. Real quick, before I let you go, or you let me go.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm in a coaching session right now. How did you define success? How did young Adam define success when you first started your first side hustle? And how do you define it today?
Great question. Success was easy back in the day. Notoriety,
Mm,
notoriety,
yeah.
money, fame of material things.
Yeah.
And, I just shake my head even thinking about that. And again, I don't judge anybody. If that's your path, that's totally fine. Success now is totally driven by significance,
Yeah.
totally driven by being able to help, as I just mentioned, coaches or people that serve other people, to give them a model, to give them a space. I know that people that are in this vertical, we'll call it, they need two things. The first thing they need is a community. Why? Because we as entrepreneurs build in silos. And as we build in silos, what happens inside of the silos? I call it the enemy. The enemy comes in. Mike, you're not that good. Mike, they're going to turn that down. Mike this, Mike that, Mike this. And eventually, when we build in silos, we start to believe the enemy.
Yeah.
So number 2 is I know you need models. I know you need content, is what I call it. You need a framework to follow. And so the neat part about being significant is this is not the Adam Roach show. This is not called the Adam Roach community. This is called this is the I Love Coaching community. And if you love to serve and you love to coach, this is the community for you. This is all we do all day, every day. Tomorrow we're running what we call our scalable offer intensive. It's a 5-hour think we've got 35 people registered for it. 5-hour massive workshop on turning your sellable offer into a scalable offer. And I can't wait for it. It's going to be so much fun. So that's how I define success now, is just serving more people.
That's great. For my audience who would like to get more information on I Love Coaching and the Get Paid to Coach and Scalable Scorecard and all that Adam's company offers, if you're watching this on YouTube, look right down here, right below me. It says See More. Click that, and the links will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, don't do it while you're driving. We don't want to lose any subscribers. Not that way. Adam's agreeing with that. Visit your podcast app and look at the show notes, and information will be there as well. Adam Roach, I love coaching. I love the fact that you're coaching. I think that's a great business. I love your passion, and I do believe you are building significance. You certainly provided a significant amount of advice to me and my audience today. So thanks for sharing your significance. Thanks for sharing your passion and your journey. And thanks for everything you do for the coaching community.
Thank you, Mike. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for asking great questions, and I hope this lands well with those that were listening today.
All right, here are some final thoughts. Adam's story is a great reminder that entrepreneurship is rarely a straight line. Sometimes your first business teaches you how to sell. The next one teaches you how to lead. The next one teaches you how to scale. And eventually, if you're paying attention, all those lessons start pointing somewhere. For Adam, that path led from tennis to real estate to franchise ownership to recruiting technology, and finally to where he is now with I Love Coaching, where he now helps other leaders turn their experience into businesses that are clear, useful, and built around who they actually are. And I think that's one of the most important lessons for any entrepreneur. You don't need to copy someone else's model. You don't need to build a business that looks impressive from the outside but feels wrong inside. You need clarity, you need structure, you need conviction, and you need a business model that fits the life you're trying to build. That's a lesson worth remembering. Now, that is a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been busy recording future episodes with amazing guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, we'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com, where you can apply or recommend a guest, or just learn more about the show. And don't forget to check out my newest series, Reluctant Lessons, When Businesses Go Wrong. On this series, we dig into high-profile business failures and the story behind it all. We've already profiled several companies with many more on the way. As it turns out, there's absolutely no shortage. Check out Reluctant Lessons on this channel. And if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. And finally, to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether by choice or by circumstance, remember this: sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. That's it for me. I'm out of time. Thanks so much for being here. I truly appreciate every one of you, and I'll see you again soon.